I'm already saving hours of time in this multi-agent workflow. This video is part two of building a AI-based workflow in the tool called MindPal. The first video, I showed you how easy it is to create the workflow, but we didn't do any fine tuning to the agents. And so the content was fairly generic. In this video, I'm going to show you how to quickly fine tune the agents so you can get the content dialed in so it aligns with your brand voice and it follows the style that you have already defined with your brand and all of the examples of the content that you're producing. So let's quickly take a look at the workflow that we built just the other day. And for context, I am working on a client project where we're doing a 21-day sleep challenge. Each day we produce a video, and with that video, there's a YouTube description, a YouTube title, there's an email newsletter that goes out, and there's social post as well. You can see from the workflow that I've got right here, there are about 10 different steps in this entire workflow. And I'm going to show you how you can fine tune these agents so you get the content that you want. I'm going to show you how easy that is to get done. Now, first of all, let's take a quick look at the content that I was producing when I first built this. The nice thing about MindPal is you can go into your workflow and you can see all of the outputs that you've run through the workflow. So when I built this just the other day, this here is one of the first outputs that I created. And you can click on each one of these steps and you can see all of the content that it produced. And just for reference, I'll show you the YouTube video description because this is one of the examples that I know didn't look very good. It's written in the third person and it doesn't really align with our brand voice. Another example of that is when you get into writing the email newsletter and any type of social post. So here's the email. It starts out with a terrible salutation. It's the worst way to start an email to your list or to anybody. And then the social posts were fairly typical AI produced social post. So we're going to fix this today. And I'm going to show you what I've done to take each one of these agents and dial it in just right. So let's go back to the workflow that we have today. First of all, just go through each agent step by step and show you what you can do. First of all, in the task, you can give it some context about what you want it to do in this specific task. And in this case, I've told it very clearly, take the input from the first step, which is a manual input of the transcript, take this as input right there, and then make a list of titles. That's what this agent does right there. Now, if I click into the agent, it has the background information that tells the agent what it is, what it's good at, what it's supposed to do. And then you can tell it what the output format should look like. And this is all AI generated by MindPal, but you can go in and fine tune it. Now, let's get into the details of this. First of all, I've defined a knowledge source. I've got a document called the 21-day sleep challenge. And this is the context. It's just a text document that describes what we're doing. So that's a bit of information that the AI agent knows about it. The next piece is on the output setting. I can choose my brand voice. So this is another document that I created a long time ago, and this aligns with my client's style and how she communicates. So now we're going to get content that matches the style and tone of my client. Here's where it gets really powerful is you can now define which large language model that you want to use. And depending on the task, different models perform at different levels. So for this task right now, we're just generating the YouTube titles. I want to brainstorm a list of titles. So I'm happy to use the O1 mini model. And when I go through and I decide which ones I want to choose, I can choose it based off of cost, how many AI credits am I going to use, and also I start looking at which model produces better content for the task at hand. So I know for a lot of cases, O1 mini is going to work really well, but sometimes I'll use ChatGPT 4.0 latest, and you can see this one here will cost 10 credits, and this one cost 5 credits. You can see you get a lot of AI outputs just for a very small amount of credits. And just for context, the amount of credits that you get when you sign up for MindPal is significant. 6,000 AI credits per month on the basic plan. That's what I am at. I rarely approach this level. So I'm not worried about using too many credits, but as you start adding more of these workflows and they get more and more steps, it's not uncommon that you're going to use 100 credits per each run. And that can add up. And you can see that right here, I have an estimate of 66 AI credits per this run. Okay, so we've gone over the easy one, which is the YouTube titles. The next step is I choose the title that I like, and then the next agent is going to write the YouTube video description. And as input, it's going to take the transcript from step 1, and it's also going to take as input the title that I selected in this step here, which is a manual input. That's where I chose the title that I liked, and now it's going to take those 2 bits of information and it's going to write a YouTube description. Now, if we go into the agent, now with knowledge sources, I've got a couple additional files. I've got the same context file for the 21-day challenge, but I also have an example file of what a video description looks like for YouTube for my client. There's a typical style where we have a short description, maybe some bullet points, timestamps, and a link to the website. Back in the output settings, we have the brand voice again and language model 01 mini. Now, in this case, I'm going to change it to 4.0 latest because I want it to be a little bit more consistent, and I think it does a better job at that. And then tools, we're not using any, but just to give you a little look, there's quite a bit you can do here. So I'm going to click on Update Agent. That will save it. Now, the next step in this series is this agent is to generate the SEO keywords for this video. Now, this is really specific, and what happened in the first run when I did this is that it generated a list like that, a numbered list. And when I enter these into YouTube, I copy and paste. I want a single line, comma, separated. So in this agent, what I've done here is I wrote a little statement in the output that says, I want a single line, comma, separated. And I also noticed in some of the outputs, I was getting the typical AI thing that said, here's a list of keywords. Let me know if you need anything else. So I told it I only want the output of keywords and omit any of the other content that AI will produce for you. So these are some of the ways that you can edit your agent to get more consistent and more specific. And up here, I didn't have to do any knowledge sources. And the language model, I believe, or defaulting back to 01 mini. If you don't put a model in, this is going to be the default one. So I'm just going to leave it blank for now because that's faster. And I didn't change anything, so I'm not going to update it. This next step is one where I generate some captions for our YouTube thumbnail. This is a quick one as well. And this is something that we'll go over into Canva and take some of the suggestions and insert it into there. And this is another quick agent. I do have the context for the sleep challenge, so it knows about that. The brand voice, language model, 01 mini as well. So nothing to change there. Now, here's where you really want to make sure your brand voice is dialed in. So this one is the email that we send to our list of people who have signed up for this challenge. And I've got a little bit of context here. And if I want context specifically for this task, and maybe I'm using this same agent in another workflow, I can get very specific in this area and keep the agent a little bit more generic. But typically I'll make the agents and fine tune them for each workflow. And you can see here, this is the instructions for what I want to be in the email. And one thing that I've done in this is that I know that there is some language that AI tends to put in at the bottom of any emails. That's a little bit of a rah-rah, let's go do this type thing. I hate it when I see that. It just sounds so formulaic and it doesn't sound sincere, nor does it sound authentic. So this is where I tend to give AI some instructions about what I want to avoid. And if I see this a lot repetitively, I might make a knowledge file that says list of phrases to avoid and keywords to avoid. That might be added to a style guide. For the most part, though, I can typically just address it in the fine tuning of the agent. This is where having another example of what an email looks like is critical. And then obviously I have the brand voice already defined. And then here is where I really like the ability and flexibility to choose different models, because I love how Anthropic's Claude language model produces content for emails. I believe that it sounds more authentic, more conversational, more real. And I've defaulted to using Claude for anything in emails or just conversational content. So I've defined Claude 3.5, Sonnet, the latest version here. And just for reference, this one uses 10 credits per request. So you can see how you start mixing and matching different AI models to maximize the responses that you get. And then I didn't change anything here, so I'll move on. And then I'll quickly go through the last four, but these are interesting. So there are two different types of posts, one for LinkedIn and one for Facebook. And then there are two steps for each of these. The first step is to create a draft social post. The second step is to create or actually review that post and make sure that it aligns with the brand voice. So when I draft a social post, the agent is right here. I will click on it. And then here's some basic instructions about what it should include. I didn't change this too much. And I kept it pretty generic in terms of knowledge sources. And I did use a brand voice and then language model 4.0 latest. Then in the review, this is where I give it more specific instructions. Make sure that should be free of grammatical errors, things like that. I may get more specific with this, but I wanted to understand that its job is to ensure that it aligns with brand voice. So I've iterated on this a few times because it's changed in terms of quality, and I'll probably change it again until I really get it dialed in to sound like my client's real, genuine style. And I've repeated the same thing here on the Facebook social posts and reviewing of the post as well. And on these, I forgot to mention, when I'm doing the review, I'm using Claude 3.5 Sonnet. When I'm generating the draft, I'm using ChatGPT. So those are the big differences. And again, when I'm creating language and content that I want to sound authentic and real, I tend to default to Anthropic's Claude model. So now let's run this through and see how it works. And since my first video, we've actually been doing this 21-day sleep challenge. So we're now on day 3. So I'm going to do this new run and I'm going to go grab the transcript for the day 3 video. Okay, so step 1, enter the transcript. It's right there, and hit continue. It's going to generate some titles for me, and then we'll go from there. And this title aligns well. Now, what you don't know is the context of this third video is there are 3 tips to really enhance your quality of sleep. They're not obvious tips. So this is a pretty straightforward title, and it's optimized to boost curiosity and things like that. So although I might change this later, for this video, I will keep that. So copy and paste it in here. And then the rest of this is automated. So now it's going to write the YouTube description. And you can see the difference here versus what we created earlier is night and day. It knows the link. This is the link to go sign up for the sleep challenge. So if you are interested, this link is active and you can sign up and get an email each day to help enhance your quality of your sleep. And this aligns perfectly with the examples that I placed into the knowledge files. Now, one other thing that I've worked on is a lot of times when you see like bold or italics, AI will create markdown language. I've told it also, when you create any type of formatting, make sure it's in alignment with what will be accepted on YouTube, because I don't want to do too much editing of things like that. I really wanted to get the formatting right. So that's another thing that I put into the agent instructions. So this looks really good. I don't need to do any editing on this, maybe a little bit of wordsmithing here and there. I've got my keywords, the exact format that I want. So this is copy and paste. I've got an example of a caption for a YouTube. I'm going to update this one so I get 5 examples or 10 examples so I can pick and choose. I don't like just having one option because I'm really not too happy with that output. Then here's the email that's going to go to our list. And I've got instructions. I want a subject line. And then I want an email preview line because that goes into our email sending software. And this is perfect. Let's see if it's still on target. Yeah, this is a pretty good email. So we've got everything there that we need. Now let's look at the social post. Here's a really good example of seeing what can happen in a draft social post and then the fine-tuned one. So this one, it did the job. It's not too bad. It doesn't sound too much like the style of my client, but it's not far off. Then the next part is this one. This does sound a little bit more like the style of my client. I'll probably still fine-tune this, but it is different than this post here. This one, if I looked at it, I might notice and think that this is written by AI. This one sounds different enough and more like the language and style of the client. I might think that, hey, this is written maybe with AI, but not just generated by AI. Yep. And then the other part that happens is I got to fine tune this because it summarizes all of the key changes made, which isn't bad informationally, but really what I want to do is I want to go up here and just hit copy. So I have to copy, go into an editor and remove all this stuff. But I can also just go right here and I can just delete this stuff right there and edit within MindPal. So that's actually a nice benefit of this. I just don't always like to do the editing in here, but it's good enough. And the same thing with the Facebook post. Not bad. And then this is just a little bit longer. I almost like this version better. So anyway, I've got 2 different variables. I can change these. I can play with them. And I will probably update this agent for each of the social posts further. But this is already dialed in to like 90+% of what I need it to be. And just by tweaking those agents, adding the brand voice, adding the knowledge files with the examples, and then choosing which language model I want to use for each of the content types. If there's one single thing that I think makes the most difference in any of these outputs, it is adding examples to your knowledge files and being explicit in your instructions to the AI agent to make sure that it understands to utilize the examples when you're generating the output, and then you're going to get consistent output. And the magic trick behind all of this is once you do this a few times, you're going to generate more examples, and you can combine all of those into a large text document and then have a larger data set of known good examples. And that's how you can fine tune these agents over time. And they just get better, they get more consistent and more dialed in. So the amount of editing that I need to do after this is even less. Now, the big takeaway from this is this workflow would normally take several hours without the help of AI. With just ChatGPT and chat agents, or I should say just with chat, going back and forth, copying and pasting a prompt, copying and pasting the output, you can get this dialed into around an hour if you're fast and you're organized and you have all of your prompts ready to go. You've just watched me do this in less than 20 minutes while I'm making a video, but the reality is I ran this workflow and it only took me a few minutes. and I've got minimal editing to do, and everything is ready to copy and paste into everywhere it needs to go. That is a huge savings. It's massive. And when you start thinking about doing content like this day after day and using AI based agent workflows, you can have a significant impact on the work that you do, the time that you save, and you can get really consistent in how you execute on your brand. So I hope this is enjoyable for you. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments. I'll be happy to go over any other details about this. I have a lot of different workflows and agent types that I use, and MindPal is just one of several different types of software out there that utilizes this idea of creating agents and chaining them together into a big workflow. And they're doing it really well, and they're innovating quickly. So what I showed you today is already an improvement over what they had available a month ago. So that's one of the reasons why I love this company. They're moving fast and they're doing things really, really well at a high level. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you decide to use MindPal or a product like this. And I'm really looking forward to hearing any feedback about how this is impacting you and your business. All right, take care. I'll see you next time.